At 1:22 in the morning, a 12-story beachfront tower vanished into the ground in under 12 seconds. 98 people died. And the most disturbing part, the building had already been collapsing for weeks. On June 24, 2021, at the Champlain Towers South condominium in Surfside, Florida, hidden stress fractures inside the concrete foundation finally reached their physical limit. A structure that had stood for decades was reduced to a massive pile of pulverized concrete and twisted steel in seconds. When a massive concrete tower falls that quickly, the immediate assumption is that some sudden, unforeseeable catalyst must have struck the foundation. Maybe a sinkhole, a localized explosion, or something instantaneous. 5 years later, in June 2026, the National Institute of Standards and Technology released a report that changed the understanding of the disaster entirely. The NIST report revealed a much longer timeline. According to investigators, the building had been in a state of active collapse for weeks, beginning long before the first call to emergency services. This finding has implications far beyond Surfside. Millions of people live in coastal high-rises from the same construction era. And if the tower's fall wasn't a sudden fluke, the search for the cause becomes a matter of national safety, forcing investigators to look closer at the physics of the weeks leading up to the disaster. 3 years before the tower fell, during a required 40-year retrotuffication check, an engineering firm called Morabito Consultants inspected the property and flagged a severe structural warning. They documented a major error in the construction of the pool deck. The waterproofing layer was poured completely flat instead of slope. Rain and pool water couldn't drain. It pooled on the surface and steadily seeped down into the concrete ceiling of the parking garage below it. This diagram illustrates what happens when salty water breaches concrete and reaches the reinforcing steel rebar hidden inside. The steel starts to rust, and as it oxidizes, it physically expands. Engineers call this spalling. As the steel swells, it generates immense internal pressure. It eventually blows the surrounding concrete apart from the inside out, flaking off chunks, and leaving the structural steel exposed and unsupported. Fixing this level of deep structural rot is incredibly expensive. The Condo Association board faced a $15 million repair bill. For 3 years, the residents and the board debated the costs, ordered more assessments, and argued over how to fund the massive project. By April of 2021, the association president sent a letter to the residents, confirming the concrete deterioration had grown exponentially worse. They finally approved the funding, but the heavy structural concrete repair work still hadn't started. The humans in charge spent 36 months navigating meetings, budgets, and bureaucracy. But the chemical decay eroding the building's foundation never paused to wait for a vote. By early June 2021, the time for administrative delays ran out. This wireframe shows the exact failure point identified by the NIST investigation. Under the weight of the waterlogged, decaying pool deck, the connections between the horizontal slab and to specific vertical support columns in the garage finally snapped away. The immense physical weight held up by those two columns transferred to the adjacent supports, a process called load redistribution. For 3 agonizing weeks, those neighboring columns carried a massive burden they were never designed to hold, straining under the crushing weight. Just 36 hours before the final fall, a pool contractor walking through the basement equipment room captured video of standing water, cracked concrete, and severely corroded rebar right next to those critical support zones. At 1:22 a.m. on June the 24th, the overstressed columns reached their absolute breaking point. One gave way, transferring its load to the next, which shattered, creating a progressive pancake collapse that pulled the entire eastern wing into the earth. The 12-second plunge captured on camera was the final, inevitable result of a structural death spiral that had been accelerating for weeks. In the immediate aftermath, engineers analyzing the wreckage realized the surviving western half of the tower was highly unstable and continuously shifting. To protect the search and rescue teams digging through the rubble, Officials made the difficult call to bring the rest of the structure down in a controlled demolition 10 days later. The disaster resulted in a $1.02 billion legal settlement for the victims. But the tragedy also sparked ongoing investigations into the initial 1980s construction practices, potential corruption, and evidence that the land under the building had been slowly subsiding for decades. Florida lawmakers responded to the collapse by passing Senate Bill 4D, establishing a strict new milestone inspection scheme for aging condo buildings. The law stripped away the loopholes that allowed the Champlain Towers Board to delay their repairs. Today, Florida condo associations are legally prohibited from waiving the requirement to keep a fully funded cash reserve specifically earmarked for structural maintenance. Legislation can force future compliance, but it can't undo the human cost of those delayed decisions. 98 people lost their lives because a series of severe warning signs were treated as a financial inconvenience rather than an existential threat. Concrete and steel give us the illusion of permanence, but the collapse at Surfside proves that, when structural warnings are ignored, physics doesn't debate, doesn't delay, and it certainly doesn't wait for the check to clear.